Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. I don't know how late it is to wish Happy New Year to everybody. Can we do that on the 6th, 17th of January? I think so. Because this is the first time we're together since last year, since last November. This is a program that the Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center does every third Friday, except for December. And here's a little bit about who we are and what we do. We are located here in Tallahassee, Florida, in the Panhandle, and we provide support services and walk with survivors of all ages, whether labor trafficking or sex trafficking, and regardless of immigration status or any other status, right here in the six-county area that is Florida's Second Judicial Circuit. We provide care management, and sometimes people say case management, and we have changed that to want to say care management because it's really more appropriate. We do our work with many partners. There's no way we can do our work without many partners, and many of you are on this call today, and I appreciate seeing you. But really, it's the only way, especially with this very, very broad area of services that we can do this work. We are focusing again this year in 2025 into our rural areas. And I'm looking at some of the people who are joining us today and see that we've got a lot of folks from very rural areas, I know, around our state and probably around other places in the nation. Maybe I should ask that at the beginning, too. If you are from a rural area, it'd be good to know, because we do have to do more work. And I think it's one of the myths out there that human trafficking doesn't happen in rural areas, but we know, of course, it does. We do massive amounts of community education, as well as education that is tailored to specific agencies and disciplines, say for a business community. Or recently we trained our Leon County workforce, our government workforce. So no, we can do that as well. Next slide, please. There we go, rural area from Nevada. Hello, Heather. One of the things STAC does is we also make a lot of information available to all of you, everybody, on our website. So if you go on surviveandthriveadvocacy.org, you will see a lot of information about our work, toolkits galore. We say that. We have one for agencies. We have a youth and caregiver toolkit, and really welcome you. And if anybody wants any of the the artwork for any of those things, to adapt it to your own programs, happy to work with you and make that happen. All of our services are free of charge. All of the care management, of course, is, and that's why we depend on people like you in our community for support. We also have lots and lots of events, and I say see event page, but I'm going to highlight some because, after all, this is January Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And we're doing a lot more than usual. But again, there are programs for everybody to take part in. Next slide, please. One of the first ones is a conversation that we're having on January 30th. So this is at the very, very end of the month. This, if for some of you who have been on our website and looked around there, you'll see that this event will feature our mural, which is a wonderful program where we put our chairs in a circle and really are each other's teachers and students about this topic of human trafficking. So we encourage everybody who is in the Tallahassee area to come to that. Next slide. Another event we're having January 28th is our big flagship fundraiser, we call it, called Imagine Freedom. And I have to just say with great happiness and gratitude that we're 10 years old this year. I can't believe STAC is 10 years old, Jamie. But we've been around a decade now, and we'll be marking our birthday and having an event where we show our gratitude literally to wonderful people and organizations in our community who've been there and who have been supporting survivors of human trafficking. Next slide, please. And finally, on the 22nd, and for those of you who are in the Tallahassee area, I want to ask you that if you're interested in this event, which is next Wednesday, to please scan and register now, because we will be providing a free lunch that day for all attendees. We'll be talking about human trafficking, especially how you can protect your workplace, but also how you can be in our community as a strong advocate for survivors. So do that today so we can make sure you have lunch. And we hope to see you on Wednesday at the Leon County School Board District Office. Okay, next slide. And Imagine Freedom. This is our podcast. We just released a podcast episode featuring Evelyn Chumbo. And if you know Evelyn, you'll know her to be a brilliant, a effervescent, a wise, an engaging human being, and an expert on particularly on many aspects of trafficking. She herself is a survivor of child labor trafficking. And I really encourage you, if you haven't already, explore the world of podcasts. And if you're a podcast lover like I know I am, please subscribe, rate, and review, as they say. Next slide, please. And of course, again, we can't do the work without your support. So if you are interested, able, and inclined, especially, some people from this podcast, from this webinar, have become monthly donors, and we so appreciate you. So if you do wish to support our work, this is how you get there. Also, there's, of course, a donate button on our website. Next slide, please. Okay, so today, I couldn't be more excited and happy and grateful and thrilled to be presenting with Jamie Rosseland. And many of you know Jamie. Jamie is someone who has been on this forum before. She has done webinars with us. We did a podcast together, last year or the year before now. We have worked together for a number of years. In fact, I think I met you, Jamie, through doing a webinar together. That was a number of years ago. You should know Jamie is a consultant in the field of anti-trafficking work, and you can see her description here. Please know that she's an excellent speaker, has done lots of work, and you'll learn more about her work on how to create, manage, and develop websites, which we're going to talk about today. She's a policy expert. She has done such great work in our area and all over the country, Jamie. People can read more about your bio. I'd like you to add more about it as we go to talk, but let me just say thank you to you for all you have done, are doing, and I know will be doing into the future with us. So thanks, Jamie. Are you ready to get going?
I'm so ready. Thank you so much, Robin. And thank you for everyone who's here today to learn alongside of us.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So the Thrive Space, and this is a new website. And Jamie, I wonder if we can start. Would you like to say a little bit about kind of an overview, and then we can get into the nitty gritty about our story and how we started and what we're doing and all that?
Sure. So I'll just explain a little bit about the website without the background information yet. Robin and I will get into that. But I worked with Robin and some of her partners on developing this website. It's a website that's designed for survivors and by survivors. And the point of it is there's so much information online about trafficking, and some of it's correct, some of it's not. But almost all of it is geared toward the general public or kind of service providers. There's not a lot of information out there for people who are experiencing exploitation, whether that's sex trafficking, human trafficking, and anything kind of in between or overlapping, where it's information just for them. And so the point of this website is to have a space where people can go, where there's not a donate button, where there's not signing up for a newsletter, where they can go just to find out information about what exploitation looks like. And we'll kind of talk a little bit more about how that's like structured, but that's kind of the whole idea behind the website. It's a website for survivors, just for survivors, um, and also by survivors.
And also, I'd add, I loved how you have created this so that it reflects what we see all the time, which is sometimes people don't know they're in a trafficking situation, whether it's sex or labor trafficking. They themselves may not know about it, or they may be in a grooming phase, or even what I'd say a pre-grooming phase. And this website would be great for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, great. Okay, so should we start to get into the nitty gritty?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, all right. So, and this is something that I hope any of you who are in nonprofits will do and can do. But first, let me tell you that the reason that the seed of this project got planted was we were looking at the metrics of who goes to the STAC website, what pages they go to, what buttons they hit. So we know that about all of you. You know how that is. Everybody knows everything about what we do online. But we do it for the purposes of improving our work. And what I noticed for a number of years, literally, was that people were not pushing the help button. We weren't finding people looking for direct assistance. We found a lot of people doing what you have all done, which is go on our page to register for an event, to find out about learning opportunities, to explore some of the educational resources, but nobody was hitting that help button. And it was, and I wouldn't say nobody, but I'll say very few. And I realized the people that we need to reach, the people who are being exploited and might have this issue, are not finding this a good place. And so, talking about that with Jamie, who, by the way, is a longtime consultant to STAC, one of many survivors that we work with on a regular basis as consultants, and we engage with. And I talked about it, and her experience has been that that's often the case, and that there wasn't something like this, and there isn't something like this anywhere that we know of. A website that has the resources like this and does what Jamie just described. It's not for you to sign up for a newsletter or to donate. It's not necessarily for helpers. It is for people who want to know more, who might be experiencing this. So we looked at our metrics and said we need to do this. And so that's when we started down the road, Jamie. And let me ask you to pick it up from there.
Yeah, I think for one, I just want to take a second to pause and say it's really important as a nonprofit to do intentional work. So if you have a website, just looking at who that website's reaching and considering who does it need to be reaching. And especially for anybody who's working in outreach or looking to increase referrals, like, is your website a place where if a survivor comes, they're going to feel welcomed to that space? And so I think just even Robin, you and your team, and Michael taking the time to be like, no one's clicking the get help button. No one's coming to the STAC website to actually look for services. Then what do we need to do to make that happen? So I just want to take a second and pause and say that's a big deal. And it's this work is never ending and there's always more to do. And so taking a second to look at the intentionality of the work is really great.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have to add one thing really quick for you, too. One of the things Jamie did, I think our first project that got us going, because we were churning around this issue, what should we do? What should we do? Is we hired Jamie to look at every page of our website, our Survive and Thrive advocacy.org, and make sure it was survivor friendly. Make sure that we didn't say any, and look, we're all going to step in it every once in a while. Let's face it, we can't all know everything about everything. And we wanted to make sure that our current website was appropriate, that we didn't say anything that it was wrong, that would have been, offensive, or that could have been phrased better. And I'll tell you one thing I remember right away, when when we had in the middle of it what did we have? We had get help. We had a button, and it was like, there's got to be a better way to say that, right? And so that's what we did. We worked on it so that even that button changed to need help? Question
Yeah.
mark. A more welcoming, more an invitation, and a way that somebody who might go there. So really, Jamie, I think you probably had edits and to at least 20, 22 or more of our pages that just were improving and making it, in a phrase, survivor friendly. The other thing that we've mentioned, Michael, you've mentioned Michael. I really need to say, Michael Wynn from RBOA is our web guru, and he and Jamie worked arm in arm to create this. With Jamie doing, I would say, the most all of the content, but his expertise and pulling aspects of this together was invaluable. And so, again, another team member that we always need to work with is somebody with that expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with the Thrive Space, this new interactive website that we've created, um, that was really informed by some work that I've done with like digital outreach. And so I worked with another organization that unfortunately no longer exists, and they created something really similar. So they created a website that was for survivors and by survivors, and a lot of it was to be able to start developing these digital outreach campaigns. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the program. Um, and when you're building a website like that, at least when you're creating the content for it, it's really about what do we know about trafficking survivors? What do we know about trafficking victims? And one of the biggest things that we know is that they don't typically identify right away. So how do we create a website that's helping people come into the realization that trafficking may be a part of their story without using the word trafficking very often, which was quite a challenge. Um, and so when we take a tour of the website, you'll see that there's not a lot of language about trafficking, and that we try to simplify the language as much as possible. To make it as user-friendly as possible. Is this going to resonate with someone who has limited English proficiency? Is it going to resonate with someone who, doesn't understand the social services kind of jargon that we're all really familiar with?
Hmm. And the other thing I thought that was really important for this is that it's going to be able to be used by individuals and shared easily. And we'll talk more about that. And for everybody, so you know, we're about to go into shortly a tour of the website. We didn't want to go give you the link and all the information right away. We really want Jamie to walk you through it. So you're going to see what we're talking about in just a minute.
Yeah. And I just want to, share on the importance too of making sure that work is like survivor informed and survivor led. What I really appreciate about this project is Robin and I kind of talked about this. I pitched this idea of a sister website, and a lot of work has gone into this, which means a lot of money has also gone into this. Instead of Robin could have responded a lot of different ways. But she was really enthusiastic about this idea, and about figuring out how to make it happen. And so just each of you, whether you're the executive director of an organization, whether you're in direct service, it's really important to listen to survivors and value their ideas and go beyond just valuing survivors for their stories, but also for how they can shape what the anti-trafficking movement looks like, what services look like, um, what policy looks like. So at the heart of this is really an appreciation for things being survivor informed and survivor led. So I just I don't want this webinar just to be me and Robin talking about how much we like each other, but it's,
Well, we do, but that's not what this is
yeah.
about. But what you say is, and I learned this when I was working in the battered women's movement and with survivors of domestic violence, which was there was no way that you can do this work without grounding it in the experiences of survivors, period, end of sentence. And that when it comes to the funding, for any of you out there on nonprofits or in nonprofits, very, very rarely do you see a budget line item that goes beyond, say, direct care services, getting a cell phone or hotel stays or clothing and those kind of things. But that's all important. You do that, but you also have to have a line item for engagement with survivors. However, that can happen at whatever level, and there are many survivor-led organizations in our country and around that we can all partner with. So yeah, just think about that from an organizational standpoint too. That think about what that means and pay attention to what you can learn from survivors, and also just to simply understand that, Jamie, you're expert. You're a speaker. You're an editor. You're a writer. You have this skill to work on websites, and whether you're hiring a survivor who has skills like yours, Jamie, or who's an accountant, or who's, a landscape designer. Just pay attention, because it's all about economic stability and surviving as well, and thriving.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit too, before we take the tour, about the stages of change, because that really informed this work. And I'll share a resource after the tour that you guys can all use. But when we're developing the website, it was really developed on this model of trying to connect with people where they're at. So the stages of change model was created, I think, in the 80s. It was more adapted for the idea of substance use disorder. But this idea that if you want something to change in your life, you can't just will yourself like into it. You have to look at where you're at. And so there's these different stages. There are pre-contemplation, contemplation, planning, action, um, and then maintenance. And I'll have a visual for that later as well. And so we took that for the Thrive Space website to think about, how do we reach people who are in pre-contemplation? They just need to learn, right? They just need to learn a little bit about what trafficking is, what exploitation looks like. And then we moved from learn to kind of like safety planning. And so what do you need to do, like once you've learned to plan? Um, and then once you have planned, how do you take that action? And from there, how do you maintain that action? And so the foundation of the website is based on this uh, stages of change model, where we're really thinking about how to approach people who are in different stages, who are at different levels of readiness. And each person is in those groups is important and deserves some sort of intervention and some sort of outreach. And so to be really thoughtful and mindful about that. And that's all throughout the website as well.
And that's great. And I like when you go through it, y'all will see how that is integrated throughout, and how we hope it mirrors what is always often referred to as the empowerment model. But it's the idea that, um, you know, giving someone the resources or the ideas and moving forward in a way that I can tell you, for us and the work that we've done, every survivor is different. Every survivor has a different history and unique needs. And really, it's about empowering them to get to the next stage and get whatever they need.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Are we ready to tour?
I think we are. Well, everyone, welcome to the Thrive Space. Um, uh, This is the website, and I want to point out a couple of important features before we get started on the actual tour. So right when you come in, there's a quick exit button. So we wanted to make sure that if someone was reading this and they weren't necessarily in the safest of environments, um, that they would be able to exit the website quickly. So at any point, someone coming to this website can do a quick exit. Another great feature about this website is it has this accessibility button. And when you click this, it allows you to change the settings on the website to help people with different abilities to be able to access this website. So you can change the contracts, you can make it bigger text, you can hide images. So there's all sorts of things you can do to make this website more friendly to you if that's needed. In addition to that, we recognize that victims and survivors who are coming to the space also might speak all sorts of languages. So we also have a translate button here that allows people to translate the website into whatever language works best for them. So I just wanted to highlight some of the accessibility options that we made sure to put into the website. Um, and so this is it. The homepage provides just a little bit of information. It talks a little bit about what exploitation is. It talks about some resources that victims and survivors may need. It has the kind of get help buttons. You know, if you need us, we're here. But also, if you're not at a place where you think you need help yet, if you're curious, we're here. You know, it's a place to learn.
Can
And
Jamie, I have to stop you
yeah,
because this is
please.
when I fell in love with Jamie's work here. That, if you're curious, we're here because that has got to be one of the best buttons I've ever seen on a website where someone might be looking for help. So, anyway, everybody, I just, this is a kind of emblematic for a lot of, the openness and the non-judgmentalness of what you're about to see more of. So that's my little editorial on that.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. And you know, I talked about it being informed by the stages of change, but this is also really informed by the trauma-informed principles as well. So this place of, you know, being non-judgmental, being non-prescriptive, and being more descriptive of, you know, the help that's available. Um, really focusing on empowerment, choice, and voice in what we do, and being transparent. Um, and so at the footer of every web page, there's also just some information about this is the transparency. You know, this is a website that was developed by Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center. So if they're curious, you know, where is this all coming from? You know, that's there. It, you know, lets people know that if they live in these 6 counties, this is the information, or this is like the phone line to call. And then just being really transparent about the expectations that that's like a warm line, not a hotline. Um, but then also giving people who could be all around the country information on who to call. And then it does link to this uh, Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center's Get Help page for people to find out about more resources. And this is something Robin and I worked on together too, because we know from our work working with survivors and walking alongside of them that hotlines aren't always the easiest thing to call for a myriad of reasons. And so we also have even a caveat about if you're calling a hotline, what to expect, that we understand they're not the perfect solution. But when you're putting an online resource out there, you know, trying to be specific to an individual's unique circumstances, you know, we would take up all the web pages just on trying to get every resource that's possibly out there for people. So, you know, that's snuck in there too. Just letting people know we know hotlines aren't the only, or hotlines are not always the easiest and best solution um, available to people. So that's our homepage. So that's the start. We have a quick about us page. And once again, that's going back to transparency, where we're just trying to let people know um, who we are, why this was created, who it was created by. And then once again, those same kind of information on if you need support right now, these are the people to call based on where your location is. And here's where the stages of change really start to take place. So we have learn, which covers the pre-contemplation and contemplation stages. We have plan, which covers the planning and some of the action stages. We have leave, which covers the action stage, and then thrive, which is the maintenance stage. And thrive and resources really are there for maintenance stage. And so when you go to learn, we have a bunch of different things that you can learn about. I'm going to take us real quick to stages of change so I can give you guys a visual. I keep referring to it. So I want you guys, any visual learners out there, this may be helpful. Um, so this is, and I'll talk about the stages in depth real quick. So pre-contemplation is a stage where you may not be aware that you're being taken advantage of or exploited or even trafficked, and you may not see it as a problem. You may be in denial about your situation or may not have access to the resources and support you need to make change. And so when we're working with people in the pre-contemplation stage, and even to some degree in the contemplation stage, this is about providing harm reduction services. So we'll see a few of those kind of pop up as we go along. You have the contemplation stage, and this is where you might start thinking that maybe the situation I'm in isn't that great. Maybe it's dangerous. Maybe it's manipulative. And during this stage, you might start to gather information and resources, but you might not be ready to take action yet. Then you have the preparation or planning stage. It's called different things, but it means the same thing. And so this is where you're actually starting to take concrete steps to leave a situation. You might be actually reaching out to friends, family, or organizations for help, and you may actually be starting to make an exit plan. And then there's action, and so now you're taking those actions. You're contacting authorities. You haven't just contacted social services, but you're utilizing those social services. You're fleeing from, the situation, and then maintenance is all the work. And this is sometimes an underlooked stage, but all the work that you're doing to maintain your new life, to even build out your new life. And the hope in this stage is that you start feeling like you're just surviving and going into a place of thriving. And this is where I really wanted to normalize like needing access to long-term support and resources, such as housing, counseling, education, and also just letting people know that you can have a better quality of life when you access these resources than just trying to do it on your own. So those are the stages of change and kind of a visual. If you go on this website and you want to learn more about the stages of change in trafficking, there is a podcast that you can listen to that's linked here, and some other great resources that are linked.
And one of the things I'd like to also emphasize for you all is sometimes you get a sense with resources that they are only for survivors of sex trafficking. We know that this is one of those websites that is going to be, I hope, seen by people as a resource for both sex and labor trafficking, whether you are labor trafficked, say only. That's why we wanted to feature, the faces of people who would not have any connection at all to sex trafficking. We know, though, that we need to deepen our work around parts of this. Maybe I would say parts of it is on the labor trafficking side, but all of this, again, this is the 1.0. And we'll be working on that as we go. So know that this is, I just want to say, Jamie, as you've gone through this, gosh, and you all, okay, I didn't say this before. I should have said this before. It takes time to do this. And the resources that we have, the videos, every time I went through and did it, an edit, a review, whatever, I learned more. this is the people and the survivors that are here speaking about this issue. Maybe some of you have seen these resources, some of you may not have. They're all great, and I'll just plant just another little seed, which is we want you to be in touch with us if you have additional resources. We'll talk about that later. But the ones that are here, I have to say, kudos, Jamie. I know, again, you did a ton of work finding great resources for both sex and labor trafficking.
Yeah. And thanks for making that point, Robin. We definitely didn't make the website about sex or labor trafficking, but really about both. And you'll see that, well, you'll see that just in the homepage, just with this graphic right here. We really wanted to represent a lot of different people in this like Thrive logo. We didn't want it just to be the kind of stereotypical, young girl sex trafficking victim. We really wanted to show this is an issue that can impact anybody regardless of race, sex, gender, age. And you'll see that too when we get to the defining exploitation page, which I think is, for me, this page has a lot of information on it. I thought it was it's a very formative page for people to really understand. So it defines exploitation and it ties that to the federal definition of trafficking. But then we kind of broke it down into these easy to understand examples, like feeling controlled or manipulated by someone, feeling like you're being taken advantage of, feeling as though you have no other option or that you can't leave, feeling afraid or unsafe, feeling as though you are not being fairly compensated for your work, being paid less than you were promised, or about the type of work. And so that really transcends the types of trafficking that can apply to either sex or labor trafficking. Those feelings, these are two similar but different crimes, but the feelings that victims and survivors have can also have a lot of overlap.
And also, Jamie, we didn't mention this, but I really need to give a shout out to our beta testers.
Oh, yeah.
So when we finished what we thought was, and that last section was one that we got some feedback on,
Yeah.
and we changed. So we had also individual survivors that we have worked with, who we have worked with, go through this website as well and give us feedback before we're launching today. So, so thank you to them, and they know who they are. But we have had another layer of review here, so that was great to get their feedback too, wasn't it?
It was. And so when we say it's for survivors and by survivors, well, I created most of the content. We did have other survivors review this and give us their feedback. And when we were looking for additional consultants on this project, we were really mindful of where are the gaps in my knowledge, where are the gaps in my expertise, and how do we fill those in with bringing on other consultants to review this work
And paying them, by the way. I'm just going to say it. We paid. Everybody got paid because that's what we have to do. I know sometimes survivors say it all the time, but those of us who are not survivors have to say it all the time too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we took this idea of force, fraud, and coercion, which we say all the time in the anti-trafficking movement. But how do we break that down for people who might not, know about this? And we also, included a trigger warning, for people. So we broke the idea down of what does force mean? What does that look like? What does fraud mean? What does that look like? And then coercion, maybe the most difficult of those three words to understand. We broke that down as well. So people could kind of understand when they hear force, fraud, and coercion, what that means and what that can actually look like. And so we define what labor exploitation looks like. And then we define what sexual exploitation looks like. And then once again, we give people the option to dig in more if they want to. If this wasn't enough information for them, then we have some additional resources for them. And, we guide them, through the process. Do they want to learn more about what exploitation looks like, the different types of exploitation? And they can do that. Do they want to kind of understand fact from fiction? And one thing I will say about this there's all this misinformation out there, and there's so many misconceptions about trafficking. Those things don't just impact the general public, and they don't just impact service providers and people who work in this work. They also impact people who are being exploited, and it keeps them away from understanding that their experience is also exploitation. So this is kind of an older example, but it's fresh in my mind. When the Wayfair story broke and about how they were selling people on Wayfair through, these $3,000 cabinets or whatever it was, so on and so forth. Um, there were actual people who were being victimized. There was this social media network of people who were in active exploitation, responding to this. They felt so bad for those victims, but they themselves are victims. So these misconceptions don't just impact us as a whole, but they also impact people who are currently experiencing exploitation or have experienced exploitation, but don't understand what they experienced was trafficking. Beyond, just checking time too, beyond, I'll go right into the factor fiction page. So we thought it was important to kind of break down these human trafficking rumors for people who've experienced exploitation or currently. So it's this, fiction. Trafficking always involves force. So spelling that, trafficking is always done by strangers. These are flipping a little too fast for me. That you're held captive in trafficking. That might be something we talked to Michael about. Can we make him flip a little slower? Um,
Yes.
we're learning as we go right now. And that this idea that people are consenting to sex work, spelling that myth, that it's only girls that are trafficked, but people of all genders are trafficked. This idea that you have to be moved across a border, um, and really trafficking is a crime against a person, not against a border. Like human smuggling is a crime against a border, but trafficking is a crime against a person, and you don't have to cross borders for that. Um, this idea that the word child prostitute is legitimate when it's not. We know that, children cannot consent to sex, so they for sure can't consent to um, being sold for sex. That the only type of trafficking is sex trafficking. That rescue is involved, in exiting, and so rarely is anything that's close to rescuing involved in, victims and survivors exiting their situations, or that people always identify as victims or survivors. So even for the people who are experiencing it, we wanted to dispel these myths and misconceptions. We have some information about safe harbor laws. We looked at the stages of change page. Um, we have some, oh, Robin, you might have to help me with composite stories. Is that the, yeah,
Yeah, there's stories that are not, that we know in terms of the survivors that we have assisted, and I'd give a shout out to Graciela Marquina, who's STAC's community services advocate, and these are all based on fact, and we thought it was important to have these, right? So people can possibly identify, seeing different faces as well, and just understanding. Yes.
yeah. And I'm also just looking at Brent's comment in here too about serious harm. And Brent, I would love to even chat with you after this about how we can incorporate this term serious harm into the website as well. So thank you for that. And surprise, we'll have a survey at the end of this too, where you can put in any specific thoughts and ideas as well. And you can also email me or Robin with any specific thoughts or ideas. This is a ever evolving and growing website. It's not supposed to be static, and we definitely want to hear from you. So with the stories, we just have a few composite stories, one about labor trafficking, another one about like sex trafficking of a minor, one more about domestic servitude, one about kind of online exploitation, and we call out OnlyFans specifically as being a bad actor in this landscape. And I think the stories is a place where this website can definitely grow. Like, where do we need to add stories? What stories are missing from here? We talk a little bit about what trauma bonding is, and then we have the types of exploitation. And so people can kind of understand, even, within the categories of sex trafficking and labor trafficking, that there's even, smaller subcategories of those. So we talk about what familial trafficking looks like. What do escort services look like, or sex work, pornography, illicit massage businesses, brothels, public solicitation, forced marriage, online exploitation, child labor exploitation, and debt bondage, and also forced labor and forced criminality. So we really try to run the gamut of all those little subcategories in there as well. So people can kind of understand there's not only one form of trafficking, there's multiple forms of trafficking, and you can be the victim of not just one, but also, multiple forms. And then a topic I love presenting on is victim blaming. And so, and I usually talk to service providers and the general public about this idea of victim blaming. It was really interesting to say, well, um, how would I talk to victims and survivors about victim blaming? Because that victim blaming can also be internalized. That is often the product of a trafficker's methods is to get, people to blame themselves for what's happening. And then it's also a product of society. So really trying to address that. And then this is a video that I love to share with community partners, and I thought it would be great for survivors and victims and survivors to also be able to have that. So Learn is really where we have the most resources. And from there, we move to Plan. So we have some safety planning tips. And so we provide some tips, and one of our consultants, they really helped us add this emotional safety one, and this encouragement one. Like, remember that every step you take is an act of courage and resilience. So that was something that actually came from our consultants. And for us, we didn't feel like we needed to recreate a safety plan for people. There's so many different safety plans out there that can be used for trafficking, even if they weren't, 100% built for them. So we provided some links to different guides based on people's different experiences, and the different ways that they identify. We also have just some safety tips. So how do you identify grooming? What does targeting look like? What does gaining trust look like? Feeling a need, isolation, taking advantage, maintaining control. We have some online safety tips, and this is something that we might be able to expand upon later. Um, Traffickers often use social media as a resource to groom and recruit. So, talking about how to stay safe on social media. And then we have arrest safety planning. So we know that a lot of victims and survivors are criminalized for their exploitation. And so we offered some ways to stay safe during an arrest. And then just offering this insight, especially for people in commercial sex, just to know about the different laws, depending on what state you're in, because prostitution is not a federal crime, it's a state by state crime. So for anyone who's being commercially sexually exploited, for them to know what the laws are, either in their city or in their state. We also have some labor trafficking assistance, and I do think this is an area where we can grow on the website. And a lot of the resources that are here now are because of one of our consultants who worked with us. So I think it's definitely a place where we can grow. We do talk about labor trafficking really specifically on other parts of the page too. And then we get to, how do you become mentally prepared to leave? Because this leaving isn't just the action of packing your bags and actually going, but how do you mentally prepare for that? And then how do you physically prepare for that? So recognizing it's not just one thing. And then once you leave, what are you going to do? So you have to start thinking through like what resources are you going to need if you leave? And how do you start getting those things kind of lined up? So that's the plan. And then for leave, we really just want to, well, I want to sit with this idea that no matter how someone got into an exploitative situation, whether they were quote unquote the perfect victim, and we're like forced into it, and like there isn't any nuance of choice. It's just very clearly they didn't want this, to maybe this is someone who voluntarily went into sex work and then found themselves being exploited. We just believe people have the right to exit. So we're not here to kind of judge or try to assess, how did this person get in here and what level of choice is involved. If they're in this situation and they want to get out and they're finding it difficult to get out, they have the right to exit. And so that was really important for us to share. And so these are some tips for when you are leaving. What do you need to do when you're leaving? And then we have some resources for once you've gotten out. Well, what now? A lot of people need to rebuild their finances, and there's been some legislation that's passed that makes it easier for survivors to undo some of the harm that's been done to their finances in the years of exploitation. What does education look like? We have links to all these different scholarships that are available to survivors. What does professional development look like? And this is definitely shouting out some, great survivor-led and ally-led resources, Elevate Academy, the Survivor Alliance, the National Survivor Network. Like, what do you need to be able to develop the skills to build a website? What does that look like for you? And because this is an online website that's available to everybody. It's not, we wanted to offer these programs that are available, everywhere. What does legal services look like? And Brent Woody is on this on this webinar right now, and quite honestly, if he is not actually on this, his website, needs to be on here.
Yeah, Brent, just let us know. And Jamie, you can't do this and look at the chat, but I need to tell you that tons of positive feedback and hearts and claps are coming in. So kudos to you.
Thank you, Robin. I really appreciate that. Thank you for taking the time to tell me, because I am just focused on sharing the website right now. What do survivor support groups look like? And we'll get to the last page and we'll kind of wrap up the tour with resources. And so it kind of goes back to, are you in need of support? Do you know someone who needs support? And I said this is a website for survivors and by survivors, but this could absolutely be used by someone who is a friend of someone going through this, and they're looking for resources as well. And it goes back to linking to STAC's Get Help page to visit their library of resources. We didn't feel like we needed to recreate that. We felt like we could just point people to where they needed to go for that. And then, yeah, just hand selecting a lot of these video resources for people to learn more about trafficking, exploitation, whether it's sex or labor, whatever it looks like, for people to be able to identify. So I think there's around 20 videos here that really represent a lot of different types of trafficking, that really let people identify from all sorts of places. And if you know of a video that needs to be on here, send it to us and we'll make it happen. So that's the tour. I'm gonna wrap it up and I'm gonna let Robin talk for a little bit because I feel like I've been talking nonstop for a little bit.
You've been doing great, and I think that the tour. So, do y'all want to start to put? I know you've been putting some comments in the chat, but just let's take a pause and get some feedback from people. What did you like the best? What kind of what when you were looking through this? What are some of your impressions? Let's just start with that because again, we're launching and in some ways, and with the survey as well, you all are kind of like a 150 person focus group for us. So, yeah, the translate button, how it's written, information is there. Yep, yep. And wait till you start watching the videos. I promise you, you will. And you know what I was thinking too, because we do so much training in the community, these are resources people should know about when they're doing, when, you know, that you have curated, we have curated this information so you can have confidence that it will be good information for you to share because there is a lot of dreck out there. And you do have to be careful if you know what I mean. Not intimidating. That's a really that's a useful thing. That was one of our goals here. Lots of information. Translate really important. Yeah. Okay. No, we haven't thought about everything. Thank you for signaling that, Michelle. But I know we thought about a lot of things. How many years were we working? This has probably been a 4 year
18 months
project.
to 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
And I mean, the idea's been floating around for a bit longer, but the actual work that's gone into, I would say the majority has happened over the last 18 months to 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And how to get there and what we need to do. Absolutely. Um, so this is good. So these are great comments. Remember, we want the not so great I mean, I don't mean not so great. They're all going to be great. You can say to us, you know, you totally might think about something else in this department. I would say, as a lawyer, when I was looking through the arrest, being safe during an arrest, and I'd ask all of my friends in the bar to kind of think about that as well, especially if you do and have done any defense work or have worked with survivors, that we want to make sure that that is effective enough, knowing that every situation is going to be different. And all the factors that go into whether someone will need this exact information. You know, it's dicey when it comes to laws and such. So that was one place where I look forward to maybe some refining and maybe expansion. So there's the website. There it is. We're going to offer it at the end too. So let's talk a little bit about, now we have this, and I hope those of you who are on this will be sharers of this. We did invest greatly in its creation. And as you can imagine, in our world, it's a lot to spread information, especially good information like this, out there. So we're going to be working on our next steps, which involve reaching out on social media. And Jamie, you haven't talked too much. You've been perfect in everything. But what I'd like to do is now jump in a little bit with your social media expertise, because everybody, this is what was so cool when we were thinking about this as well, is we are not going to the usual suspects. We don't want to go to the usual suspect. And you know what I mean by that? I mean, all of the curated, 8,000 people say that are on our website. They're already part of the choir, so to speak, that we're singing to, and we will definitely be sharing this with them. But how do we get to people who are not part of our usual outreach? And Jamie, I know you have some initial thoughts on that.
Yes, I do. So I'm really excited to talk about the digital outreach component of this. You can build a website like this, but if you never tell people about it, if you never point people to it, then it's not going to get any traction. And the people that we really want to know about this website are people who are currently in exploitation or people who have survived it and are in need of resources and connection with community. And so, uh, step one of connecting with those people is to really build out a resource and information-rich website like we have. But the next step is to start creating digital outreach campaigns that reach people who've experienced exploitation currently or in their past. And so, what we plan on doing with this website is creating these digital ads, probably mostly on Meta, I would imagine, um, that's targeted for um, Robin's service area, and it's a way for them to have another referral channel, essentially. And when we put together those outreach campaigns, once again, we're going to fall back on these trauma-informed principles and these ideas behind the stages of change. Um, so Rob and I are going to get together, maybe some other STAC staff members and say, who are the people that we want to reach out to? Are we wanting to do a campaign where we're just doing pre-contemplation and contemplation? And do we just want to let people know information? We're not necessarily looking for referrals, but we're looking to share information with those people. And so we would create a campaign based on that, stage of change. Or is Robin and her team looking for the potential to increase referrals, and we're looking for people who are in the planning and action stages. So how do we develop a campaign that's trying to reach those people? A campaign that I ran, a digital outreach campaign I ran during the pandemic, was specifically targeted for people who had gotten out of a trafficking situation but hadn't yet identified, but were more vulnerable because of everything that was going on with the pandemic. So we were trying to reach people in the maintenance stage, but who were more vulnerable to re-exploitation because of everything that was going on with the pandemic. So, with each of these ideas for outreach, the idea is you create the campaign and you also create a landing page that is specific to them on the website. And one thing you may or may not have noticed about the website is it's really it's pulled back. There's some branding, right? Like there's some consistency. We have the same colors, we're using the same fonts, but it's really, pared back quite a bit from how much usual branding is on a website. And so it's really these really easy to read pages that have these really clear, calls to action, And as we run these social media campaigns, because you can't just go into Facebook and Instagram and say, please target. Please target people experiencing sex trafficking. Like Facebook and Meta don't know who those people are, right? And so
Mhm.
through the process of, um, you run your first campaign, and um, the first campaign, you put some limitations, but it's a broad reach. Um, but then you start retargeting the people who have clicked on it, right? And then you start getting that more and more narrow and more refined until you start actually reaching the population that you're hoping to reach. So that's the idea behind digital outreach. It's the next phase of this project, as we've gotten a ton of resources up there. And as we continue to add resources to the webpage, we'll also be using this to outreach to communities. And we encourage you guys to do the same. This is a website that you guys can also do this with. If you need those special expertise, then you can contact Robin and I, and we can work with you guys on, what that looks like as well. So this really is a digital outreach website. Um, it's great that we have all this information. It's great that it's good information, but we have to point people in the direction of the website or they won't find it.
Hmm. Somebody just added, Rosalind said she will be sharing with her church community and would, okay. And they have experienced contact with victims and survivors of trafficking in their area. So yeah, definitely. And Lisa, you could go to the next slide there, the next step slide. Thank you.
We can do that one real quick if we want.
Oh, you want to? You want to go back to that
Sure.
one?
We'll
Okay,
do it real
let's do
quick and
that.
get it
Let's
out of
do
the
the
way.
GEMS stages
Yeah.
of change guide. Okay,
I
go.
talked a lot about stages of change. Sorry, this slide got added in last minute. If you want to learn more about stages of change, scan the QR code. I'm sure we can send this resource out afterwards as well. But the stages of change as it relates to trafficking is really broken down in this great article by Jims. And so we'll move on to next steps
Okay,
now.
good. And also, let me remind everybody, like with all of our webinars, we'll have this recording up on the STAC website under educational resources. And we'll include this PowerPoint that will have all of the QR codes and all of the everything. So you'll be able to get it. So talking about social media and outreach, if I could ask all of you, Danielle says she'd like handouts to include participants in our participants welcome kit. That's interesting. We might do, I would say, a postcard or something like that. That would be something printable, like a PDF printable that you all could print out on your own. I love the idea, Danielle. I'm thinking maybe you work at an agency. And then you could just download it and print it and put it into the welcome kit. Great idea. I love this. Yeah, what about the social media and outreach piece? Do any of you have other thoughts and ideas that might be helpful? And if you do, you can put them into the chat. Well, community feedback and participation. With this one, um, you know, as Jamie said, this is a work in progress that we are looking forward to deepening and expanding and making useful. So as you all do this, say as you do download a handout for your welcome kit or for your church bulletin, or maybe just even working with somebody that you know who might have this going on in their lives. If you see something that would have been helpful for you that you couldn't find, you can reach out to us. We really want you to do that. We want to know what you think. You can right now help us tremendously. A lot of time, they say time, talent, and treasure. Your time in going through this website on every page, and like the labor trafficking piece, that is one where we know we're going to go deeper on. You have the resources out there. You've probably encountered something that's really good that you can share with us. What does everybody think about that? Are you game? Are you open? Thumbs up, hearts, anything you want to just indicate that you might be helpful to us. There we go. Okay, great. That's exceedingly helpful, because that's the way we make this better, because this is by and for you, as you can tell. We also want to stay involved, want you to stay involved with it. And we have our website. Obviously, how to get in touch with STAC because you're on this webinar. And I should also mention to you all, the reason why I've got these fancy headphones on and I'm talking into a microphone is Jamie and I are going to be doing this as one of our podcasts as well. Imagine Freedom Podcast I spoke about earlier. We'll be sending that out into podcast land, this information. And also, it will be available for you to share. Any of you, by the way, who have boards of directors in the trafficking area, anti-trafficking area, or in your law enforcement agency or in your clinic. This is a resource that you can also be sharing with survivors, right? When you have your, who should you be talking to in Minneapolis? You can actually have this as a resource if you're talking about human trafficking or have a trafficking awareness or information listing on any of your stuff that you've already been working on. That's already, just take the link and put it into what you're already producing. What else, Jamie? What else on staying involved and staying connected? We've talked a little bit about, practical. Is there anything else you want to say practically about? I'm just thinking about this too. Imagining, I mentioned healthcare. Imagining a hospital social worker who has just seen someone that, a doctor, a physician has seen someone they suspected of being trafficked, flagged that for a social worker. The social worker at the hospital could be giving this website out to somebody, right? Oh, you're muted. It had to happen at least once.
It does.
It's just a law. It happens
It,
at least once. Yeah.
yeah, it's not a virtual meeting or webinar without someone being muted and trying to talk. Um, yeah, I have definitely been focused primarily on the concept of digital outreach, like the potential for digital outreach with this website. But I think these are some great points, like um, having this resource as a handout in a client handbook is great. Having it up in bulletin boards is great. Even creating like little postcards, like physical outreach material, that might have the link or like a QR code, you know, especially for those in-person outreach opportunities where you just have a second with the person. You don't have a ton of time to chat with them. You couldn't possibly take the time to share all the information that's on the website with them, but you could hand them a card that takes them to the website. So I think those are some wonderful ideas and things that I quite honestly hadn't considered.
Yeah. This is like a giant link tree
Yeah,
for
yeah.
for tons of information all in one spot. Yeah, exactly. So we'll see what we can do, and I can promise you all it will not probably happen in January because you know how this month is, but February forward. And I know our communications, Anna, you I think are on this. You can already see it. One of the first calls we can do in February and is how we put together some downloadable pieces, maybe a little Thrive Space toolkit for our other website. Great. Okay, printable business cards. You're reading my mind, Kathy, with website information. Exactly. Two-sided printable business cards. Yep, we're going to do that. Easy peasy. All right. Had a question above. I want to go back to some of the questions as we're kind of winding down a little bit here. Someone asked about using the Florida hotline. Randy asked about should it be used as the information is turned over to law enforcement if someone calls that. Now, what do you, let's talk about that. And I just want to share with everyone that Florida does have what it's called the Florida Human Trafficking Hotline. And the thing about that hotline is it is run and sponsored, or I guess, out of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and operates to link callers directly to their local law enforcement agency. So people know that's how this hotline works. It works differently, say, than the Georgia hotline. Georgia hotline is very specific about whether it's a sex or labor trafficking situation, if someone's seeking services, if someone is wishing to report to law enforcement, it's a different thing. But the Florida hotline is pretty direct. It's a direct tip line for law enforcement, as I understand how that works. Brent weighed in and said it might not be the most helpful, and to contact that if you're looking for services. But what other thoughts come to your mind, Jamie, when you think about the Florida hotline or other direct calls to a law enforcement agency?
Yeah, I think law enforcement is, for one, a great resource and a great partner in anti-trafficking work. I think when we're talking about trauma-informed principles, and especially on transparency and the idea of empowerment, voice and choice and autonomy, is so many people who are currently being victimized or have been victimized are often criminalized for their exploitation, or they may not be a citizen of this country. They might have immigration issues. And so having a law enforcement hotline as being the number one resource, I don't think aligns with those trauma-informed principles. I think if someone wants to partner with law enforcement um, in their exit, I think that's great. But I definitely don't want to lead people into working with law enforcement before they're ready to.
And we don't know yet. It's a fairly new hotline as well, but we know that that is an access point for law enforcement. So I appreciate that too. Also, I'd contrast it with the National Human Trafficking Hotline because the National Hotline operates to connect someone to law enforcement when it is, as I understand how it works, if the person is a child, if the person is in immediate danger, and I've been on hotline calls. STAC is a referral agency for the hotline, and I have been on calls with the hotline when we together have called law enforcement, and it is what the survivor is asking to happen and is kind of aware and is an adult, et cetera. So the national hotline as a services line is also a strong. It's why we have that hotline here too, because that's there, and it's also empowering to survivors to kind of walk through those scenarios. A couple good ideas have come in. Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Randy. Could we put this information on a poster? Posters in bathrooms with a phone number to call if the person feels like they're being trafficked. Now that's an idea that if we have this website on, and if somebody is actively being trafficked, they may wish to call law enforcement right away, right? I mean, that would be that information, kind of different in from what we're talking about in terms of somebody on their own seeking more information. What do you think, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about like every time I go to the airport and go into a bathroom and there's a human trafficking sign, I think it would be cool if, the Thrive Space website was available to people. Um, because the call to action on those posters is you have to talk to someone. You have to
Mm-hmm.
talk to a real life person. You got to make a phone call, you got to send a text, you got to do an online chat. But what happens if you just want to learn more, right? Like what happens if, I'm not sure if this is me, but what if I just want to learn more? I'm not ready to actually talk to another human being about this, but I just want to learn more. I think that's a great idea. I think a lot of those posters are codified into law. And so I think that's a more policy challenge of, how do we get information like this onto those posters?
Mm.
I
Mm-hmm.
know I have a colleague right now who's working on a poster project in Jacksonville. This might be something she wants to add to her Jacksonville poster project. That might be great. Um, but yeah, most of those, I don't think we could just get those on the posters. I think they would have to be like legislated. So
Mm-hmm. Hey, let's go to the next. I think we're going through this next steps. Let's go to the next slide here. Speaking of QR codes, we did create. Jamie did a QR code for the Thrive Space. Um, some lots of great comments. Let me go up, and I'm just imagining someone in a airport bathroom who is in a public space and can't talk to anybody, like you're saying, and then they go to the waiting area. They can't talk to somebody, as they're getting on the plane. They can't, but they can explore quietly in the corner all the information and resources here. So, what an excellent point. Let's see. Observation about whether saying fiction or whether saying false might be a better option on the verbiage there on that one. Well, let's explore. Maybe that could be helpful. Would be a great resource for people who work in homeless shelters, Danielle, where you worked. So where they assess people for homelessness? Yes, I mentioned Graciela earlier. She is at our local homeless shelter program pretty much every week because the most vulnerable people, many of the most vulnerable people in our community are there. So having that available is really, really great. Kathy noted maybe one code for law enforcement, another for learning more in social services. Alina says would be great for ER patient bathrooms since many victims are never left alone with staff to ask for resources. What an excellent observation on that one. And, I hope you all don't mind me reading these great comments because we know for the podcast, we really want to have everybody's information and everybody's great ideas here. So thank you for all of them. Lisa also said, Jamie, can I ask to put this site on PSAs, public service announcements? I say yes. And, there are costs associated with production and on all of this too. And I'd say if any of you know of, I'm half joking only, but a foundation or any planning or granting agency that wants to be part of sharing this, help fund and support it. We are so welcoming of any financial assistance because we're limited by we're not limited by our imaginations, but we are by sometimes just the cost of going through all this because I could imagine many wonderful things. Lisa's saying yes to hospitals. How do we get that information in there? Would be great to screen for our health center as we screen for abuse, DV, trafficking. Yes, please. Any work exchange program, Workaway. Tell me what you mean by that, Rory. I know you've sent this just to host and panelists, but I'm not sure of that. Somebody's mentioned posters in jail cells. Thank you. We are starting to work more soon, I hope, with returning citizens who've been incarcerated. I think giving this information out will be great. And also, let me mention something else. Not everyone has cell phones. Not everyone has unlimited minutes on their cell phones and on cell phones usage. So for anybody out there that's helping in that area, thank you so much. And we need to kind of work more. It's almost a human right these days. It seems to have a cell phone. Everything requires you connect digitally. So courthouse posters, programs. So Rory is explaining these work programs as programs where individuals are giving housing or food in exchange for work. Yes. The little I've heard about some of these, Rory, I've heard about the potential for great exploitation of individuals. Brent is saying we're in a women's prison once a quarter. Would love to take this resource in. Most have been trafficked and most do not know it.
Yeah.
Brent, thank you. What do you think, Jamie?
Yeah, Britt knows how to get hold of me. So
yes, and thank you. We would love you to do that. And the other thing to talk about, I think, also is the generational issues often involved in this issue, where empowering parents to be able to talk to their kids means the parents themselves need to be informed, and this can help. Great. Well, thank you. We have one question. Volunteer. Okay. So that's an observation. Volunteer organizations in Charlotte County, Florida. Yes, I would say sharing this far and wide. We will depend on you for that. So,
Robin, I just had a quick
yes,
idea, and I want
go.
to share it before it gets lost.
Yes.
I know you guys have STAC Pro. I wonder if creating a poster to put in businesses' bathrooms could be a part of the STAC Pro initiative.
Hey,
Yeah.
yes. That's what's wonderful about this, isn't it? That it is so complementary, with an E, complementary to so many things that we're doing, posters everywhere. So yeah, we're not going to wait for legislation, Jamie. I'm sorry. We're just going to have to do this, right? We're just going to have to move forward. Let me say thank you very, very much to all of you for attending, to Jamie and to Michael Wynn for creating this, to Graciela and all of our survivor expert consultants who did our beta testing and commented on it. And and thank you for everything you're about to do to go forward and share the word on this wonderful. I hope you're all saying wonderful, so you agree. Resource and work. Next month, I want to tell you that the program will be on February 21st, if my memory serves. Katie Papke will be here talking about human trafficking and trauma. Katie is a survivor who is also a licensed counselor. She's going to be bringing us lots of good information, and she was also featured on our podcast, Imagine Freedom. Freedom. So please, you can go on the website now, surviveandthriveadvocacy.org, under the events page, and register for next month's program. We hope to see you there. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your comments and for your feedback, and we look forward to hearing from you again really soon and seeing you next month. Jamie, any closing thoughts and words?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone so much. This has been a labor of love, and to see it so well received really just makes me feel really good. So I'm glad it's a resource that people are really excited about. That's what I was hoping for, and I hope that it goes on to help a lot of people, and I'm glad you guys are a part of it. And thank you, Robin, for letting this happen and being part of it as well.
It is indeed a labor of love for us all. I kind of feel like we've gone through a birthing process for sure, and we're out in the world now. So thank you all, and have a great weekend. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.